Yes, I am recording my May wrap-up the same day that I recorded my reintroduction into BookTube. It's fine. I don't care. It's all good. So let's get started. These are all the books that I read in the month of May. I read a total of 9. I read 9 books in the month of May. That's a lot. No, 10. I read 10 books in the month of May. One of them I don't have. So I read 10 books, and I'm just going to go through those really quick with you guys. First off, I read The Hero and the Crown by Robin Mckinley. This is the prequel to her book called The Blue Sword. And guys, I loved this book so much. This totally got me out of a reading slump, and oh my gosh, it just reintroduced my love of reading, because after I read this book, after I finished it, I held it to my chest and just kind of went, whoa. You know, I loved this book so much because it's such a fun fantasy. It's about this girl named Erin who, she's the daughter of the king, but also the daughter of this woman who everyone believed was a witch. And so she's kind of, even though she's the daughter of the king, everybody treats her as like a sort of second-class citizen, and she's not treated well. What she goes through by the end of the book, how much she grows as a heroine and as a strong character, it's amazing. It's just amazing. I loved it. The writing style is a little funky. You kind of have to get used to it as you read it. So that's the only warning I would have about this. But for the most part though, it was this beautiful magical world that some of the things weren't really explained. Like you're kind of like, okay, why did that happen? Or how did that happen? And I don't really get it. But that's kind of the fun of it, is that you're like, oh wow, okay, I guess that happened. You really root for her during the whole thing, I feel like. You really root for her. The romance is sort of bittersweet, but it's also works out in the end, if that makes sense. It's, you know, it's bittersweet, but everything sort of comes and is wrapped up in a nice little package. I really, really like this and the culture and the world building that she created. I haven't read The Blue Sword yet, but I really want to. She wrote The Blue Sword first, and then she wrote this as a prequel, so just FYI. Anyways, loved this book so much. It's like on my favorites shelf. It's going right there. Next up, I read The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown. Guys, this book is tiny, but it packs a punch. This book is, let's see, let go of who you think you're supposed to be, embrace who you are. So this was another huge inspiration for wanting to restart my BookTube channel. I annotated the crap out of this book. She has so many good thoughts in here, and just embracing who you are and embracing your life and letting go of judgments and anxiety and all kinds of things. It's such a good book. It's only like 128 pages, guys. Read this book. It is so awesome. I love this book. I can't recommend it enough. All right, the next books I read for the month of May. This series. I read all of these books in the month of May. And this isn't the whole series. There's 3 more books that I do not own, which I'm going to purchase later on down the road. This series is the Squires Tale series by Gerald Morris. Gerald Morris, so this is the first book. It's called The Squires Tale. This follows, these are all about Arthurian legends. So they're all about King Arthur and his knights and all kinds of fun shenanigans. So this one in particular, this is the first book. We follow Terence, who becomes the squire of Sir Gawain. That's kind of where the whole thing begins. These books are full of fun, humor, and are hilarious. This particular one, it's a little more random in the adventures that they encounter. So they have just sort of random encounters with recreant knights and ladies, the weird damsels in distress, and all kinds of fun things. Next we have the Squire, his knight, and his lady. This is again following Terence and Gawain. This is Gerald Morris's sort of retelling of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. So this one has more of a plot. The first one kind of doesn't. You're kind of just following them on this adventure, on all the adventures that they have. But this one definitely has more of a plot, more of a goal to finding the Green Knight. We also have a lady thrown in there named Lady Aline. So she gets thrown into the mix as well, and it's just a fun adventure. This one has a fun lesson that you kind of learn at the end, but it's still full of humor and adventure and more of a plot. And this is, I think, my third favorite in this series. It's book number 2. Book number 3, The Savage Damsel and the Dwarf. This is my favorite book in the whole series. This is the first book I read as a kid. This one follows Lady Lynette. Lady Lynette, as she goes to King Arthur's court to try and find a knight to come and help save her sister from this evil Knight of the Red Lands who is trying to force her sister to get married. So Lynette tries to go out, find a knight that will come and rescue them. And along the way she meets Roger the Dwarf. Basically, fun shenanigans ensue. And the knight that she brings back to help them is kind of a funky knight that's sworn this oath, and he's just kind of crazy. The humor in this book, I love the humor, and the romance in this one is my favorite out of all the books. And so this is my favorite one, funniest, and to me the best romance. And this one again has more of a plot than that most of them do. So this is book number 3. Book number 4, Parsifal's Page. This one, now everybody says that everybody's heard of Parsifal's story, but I'd never heard of it. And so this is Gerald Morris's take on Parsifal's story. So this book we follow Parsifal's page, who is named Piers, and how he becomes Parsifal's page, and what happens to Parsifal and his journey as a knight, or to become a knight. This book is a bit more serious and has a bit more somber tones to it. It still has really good humor, but it hit me in the feels. It tugged at my heartstrings pretty good, and I love Parsifal. Parsifal is probably, besides Sir Gawain, is my favorite knight in this series. I love Parsifal, and how he grows as a human being and how he grows as a knight is really, really awesome. And also seeing Piers as an 11-year-old page boy, how he grows as a person as well is really evident throughout this book. So it has some more somber tones, and you sort of see the effects of the knights adventuring, because before they just kind of go on adventures and nothing really comes about of most of the stories. But in this one you see the consequences of some of that questing and some of those adventures that they go on. So this was probably my second favorite book out of this series. So books 2, 3, and 4 are my favorite books in this series. They all just have a special punch to them. Book number 5 is The Ballot of Sir Dinna Dan. This one's my least favorite so far. Ballad of Sir Dinna Dan, we follow Sir Dinna Dan, who has become a knight, but he doesn't want to be a knight. He wants to be a minstrel. He wants to just sing and tell stories. And that's kind of what he does. That's kind of all he does throughout the book. He does learn more about what it's like to be a knight, but we just follow him on his adventures, and it's a little more meandering just because we have these random adventures, but they don't really go anywhere. One of the knights in here that he meets I really do like, his name is Sir Palamedes. He's a Moor, so this is sort of taking from the Crusades. He's a Moor, and he comes to England to sort of learn what it's like to be a knight, and I like his story in this book. I like Palamedes, however you say his name. But anyways, this is my least favorite one. It's kind of meh as far as plot goes. There's just not really a plot to it. And it's also kind of sad and gruesome at the end, because we also follow the story of Tristan and Isolde in this book. It's sort of, again, Gerald Morris's retelling on that story, which is not my favorite story. It's sad and dumb, and I don't like it. So anyways, this one, not my favorite, but still book number 5. Next up is The Princess, the Crone, and the Dung-Cart Knight. So this one, I liked this one a lot too. This one has a lot of fun girl power in it. We follow this girl named Sarah, who is an orphan, and she tries to avenge her mother's death, and so we kind of follow her on that adventure and who she meets as the Dung-Cart Knight, and then who the Crone is. This one has one of my favorite quotes in it of all time, so I love that one. That one was way fun. And the last one I finished, which I just finished yesterday, is called The Lioness and Her Knight. This one, again, wasn't my favorite. In this one, we follow the daughter of Lynette, and I won't say who she ends up with in this book. So we follow the daughter of Lynette and who she ends up with in this book. And it's really fun to see like those two as parents and then seeing who their daughter is. This one I didn't like as much. I felt like the plot was really weak and it was again meandering. Like the adventures that they go on are okay, but you know, and the romance is, I like the romance. The romance is actually pretty good in this one. Just the banter between the two characters is really fun. But in this one, again, just didn't like it as much. It felt too meandering to me. And I think, again, I was beginning to get a little burnt out by the end of this book because I was just kind of reading for the sake of getting through it rather than really enjoying the story. And so I learned my lesson. I'm going to be breaking up the series in the future. The last book I read, well, not the last book, but another book that I read while I was in the midst of reading this was for my book club. And it was a book called Saving CC Hunnicutt. And I'll put a picture of it up somewhere. So that book, I enjoyed it. It had some really good girl power moments in it. A lot of talk about friendships and female friendships that I loved. It takes place in the South. This girl, her mother passes away and she goes to live with her great aunt and in the South, and so in the 70s at the time. So at this time Martin Luther King Jr. is still alive, and so racial tensions are still very prevalent. It was good. It was a good story. It was a good book. I wasn't totally in the mood to read it though, because I had just finished The Hero and the Crown and I was like, I want more fantasy, instead of reading like this kind of slice of life book about that was, but it was really funny. I liked Saving CC Hunnicutt. It has some really fun, it's a fun summary read, I would say, and a lot of fun girl power, kind of eccentric women who live in the South, and I loved it. The characters were great, the humor was great, and the lessons learned in it are really fantastic. So that's all I read in the month of May. Read 10 books. It's not going to be like that every month, I promise you. So I'll see you when I do my TBR. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions, leave a comment, and I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks. Bye.